Till very recently, talking about mental health related concerns was always very difficult. We know of varying situations in which people would find it challenging to share with anyone else what they are going through, their emotional experiences, their psychological experiences, the situations of their life, whether it's at their workplace, at their home, with friends, with family members. We were always encouraged, or in fact, rather discouraged, to talk about our experiences in the outside world. There has always been a sort of communication which has come our way to say that it's important for you to keep hidden something that may not be the best. That there is a need to try and ensure that you maintain a certain facade for the outside world. Whatever may be going on within your own personal space, within your own mind space, should be kept to your own self. It's not something that you need to discuss about. But in these last 20 months, what has become very evident is that we all need to find a way to create a connected self. Because that connected self is what can ensure that you can work towards building a beautiful mind. You can work towards creating situations, experiences, making sure that your own skills and abilities to cope with situations, to manage the difficulties that your experiences are taken care of. During these last 20 months of the pandemic, no single individual can deny that they were affected in some way or the other. That effect could have been because everything had to be shifted to the virtual platform. It could have been on account of financial distress that a lot of people experienced. There was also the additional aspect which came about in terms of the impact that was there on relationships. Meeting people was difficult, going out was impossible. There was a need to stay connected, and yet there was a challenge in how do you connect in the best ways with people. For a lot of individuals, there was also a sense of loss of finances, loss of security, loss of people in their own lives, loved ones. And all of these have forced there to be a shift within the narrative and the discourse that surrounds mental health to make the question not why mental health, but why not mental health. It's become increasingly evident that we need to try and talk about mental health related experiences with each other in a more open fashion, because that is what will allow us to keep on maintaining our sense of hope, our optimism, keep building our resilience to be able to cope with the difficult situations that may come our way. We all know and understand that problems can be many and problems will always come our way. But if we don't have the right kind of mechanisms in place to be able to manage our own selves, to be able to ensure that emotionally and psychologically you're doing well, you will always end up struggling to maintain the kind of balance that is required in order to be productive in the ways that you would want to be, and to find ways to create a growth spurt for yourself in the different domains that are of consequence and significance to you. As a result, it's very important that we need to start creating an emphasis on building a connected self for all of us. And what that means is that first and foremost, you need to start connecting to your own self before you even start looking at what is it that you can do for others. There is a significant understanding now in place that when we are looking at individuals and their sense of well-being, helping them identify what they are going through on their own is something which is very critical. Most of us do not have the best vocabularies when it comes to talking about our experiences. When we talk about emotions, emotion words, we have a very limited understanding of what those emotions can be. Most of the times, if you ask someone, what are you experiencing in this situation, they would be rather restrictive in talking about it, because the labels that they would come up with would be the simplest ones. I'm either angry, sad, happy, maybe irritable. But no one talks about things like guilt. No one talks about things like disappointment. People struggle to even identify that these could be emotional states. In fact, most people are likely to describe what is happening to them in terms of their bodily experiences. What are the thoughts that are running through their mind when they're in a difficult situation? But talking about those emotions which are happening to you is something which is very crucial. It's your ability to be able to understand what goes on within you and then to be able to express it in a coherent, cohesive manner, which allows you to have the right kind of support to be able to take care of your own self. So what you need to start with is start building that emotional vocabulary so that you can become more connected and attuned to your own self, to know what does a situation do to me as an individual is a question that you need to start asking yourself across different experiences, because that is how you can ensure that you're mediating those states that you can get into where things may seem even more difficult than what they are. At the same time, what's very important for you to start understanding and recognizing is that when you're having these different emotional experiences, it's okay for it to be different from what another may be going through. We always try to compare our own selves to what someone else may be experiencing, and that's a huge mistake that individuals end up making. It's very critical to ensure that whatever is your experience, you need to value that. Which is not to say that it cannot be looked at from a different vantage point. That has to be your next step. But the first step is to be able to accept and embrace whatever you are going through without making judgments or comparisons with others around you. It's also additionally very critical that you make sure that you understand that within the same situation you could be having a plethora of emotions, and some of them may seem very contradictory or very conflicting with each other, but that is something which is absolutely okay. In one given situation, we can always have multiple experiences, and there is nothing wrong with that. It's also critical to remember that while you are trying to connect to your own self by developing a better understanding of what you feel, and you already are experiencing certain thoughts, you have to accept those thoughts, accept those feeling states, not be rejecting of them or trying to run away from them. For most individuals, one of the biggest strategies they tend to adopt while they're going through a difficult situation is to either deny the existence of the problem or to try and find a way to avoid the problem altogether. What we forget in those moments is that the problem never goes away. The problem tends to stick. And in order to be able to take care of that, it's very essential to not avoid facing that situation. You have to be able to allow yourself to be present in that moment, in that experience, whatever that experience may be, to be able to ensure that you are able to tackle it to the best of your abilities. Yes, sometimes it may be so that when a situation is seemingly too difficult, it could so happen that you would probably struggle to understand in that moment how could there be a different vantage point. And you could develop a tunnel vision where you're only focusing on one part of the situation, not being able to shift your standpoint, your perspective on what may be going on around you. And that is something which is a must. Being able to recognize that now I'm getting stuck is a key skill, an aspect that will always stand you and in good stead in the long run. It's very important also for you to be able to remember that while you're embracing and accepting these emotional states, what you're also doing is you're developing an understanding that when there is a difference between you and the other person in terms of how both of you look at a situation, there is much learning that can happen from each other. Also, it will allow you to be more empathetic towards others when they talk about how they are feeling about a situation, and you won't question them, you won't ridicule them. And that is equally essential in making sure that you are prioritizing the understanding of your own self. You are going to be able to take care of your emotional well-being, your psychological well-being, because what you feel will also affect how you're responding to situations. It will affect the ways in which you're thinking about situations. And when you need to bring about a change in those perspectives, identifying what happens to you becomes a critical element and something that you do need to focus on and ensure that you are taking care of that aspect. What's also important is learning to talk while you are connecting to your own self, to make sure that you're being able to be in a state of mental health, mental well-being. It's important to be able to also talk and share your experiences with others. Take a look at the social fabric that surrounds you. Become more aware of those people that you can connect more with, who are able to understand and empathize with your experiences. That is a must, because it is those relationships which will always have a critical impact on how you are being able to navigate through situations as well. People who have the ability to be understanding, even if they don't identify with what your experience is, are the people who you may want to bank on and rely on when you are going through your situations. Because those will be the people who will be able to give you the space to be your authentic self. The greater the discrepancy between what your authentic real self is and what you're portraying on the outside, whether it's in your relational spaces, whether it's in your social media platforms, it will always create greater stress and it will make you feel more disconnected from your own self. So you need to start letting go of this need to keep on managing those impressions that you're making on individuals, to keep managing those impressions that you're making through your social media. We need to start looking at creating and utilizing the social aspects of social media. We have to start utilizing the social support aspect of relationships that exist. And it's very important that while you are now beginning to connect with your own self, developing an understanding of what you like, what you don't like, what your experiences are, you becoming comfortable with sharing these things with people around you, and you are changing that narrative around the acceptance of mental health related concerns. You also need to now start looking at how can you build relationships which are healthy, which are strong bonds, which will stand you in good stead across your lifespan. And that creation of that relational connectedness is also very critical to your emotional well-being. For us, it's very crucial that you now also start taking steps towards ensuring that you know who your neighbors are. If we look at the urban scenarios currently, it's very evident that while we may be surrounded by millions of people, a lot of times we feel completely disconnected from them because we don't know who our neighbors are. We don't know who it is, who is there in our family, in our friend circle, and what experiences they may be having and what are the situations of their life. For most people, there is this strong commitment which is there towards ensuring that they're doing their work, their routines, fulfilling their roles in the best manner possible. And we keep on running in the daily rigmarole of life from one thing to the next thing to the next thing, not even taking a break, a breather, a single second to pause and reflect on what am I doing this for? If I am doing this for my own self, am I really being able to enjoy these experiences or not? And simultaneously, what am I doing in terms of creating the kind of good relationships that I may require in my life, because those will be my support system, my network for the rest of my life. And these are questions that we all need to ponder on and reflect upon to be able to ensure that you can develop a more connected self. That today is the need of the hour. So it's important that you start stepping out of your comfort zones instead of focusing on just doing your roles, chores, jobs. Also start looking around to see who is there around you. What are they going through? What is their life like? Asking them simple questions about how have you been? Are things going well with you? Reaching out to them and becoming that active listener to understand from them what is going on in their own mind is something which is very, very important. Because when you start that kind of a dialogue where you are showing a genuine interest in knowing and understanding what they may be going through, what you're also doing is encouraging them to also be reciprocative in that space where they engage with you. The way that you would reach out to someone, check in with them, they would also feel that kind of mutuality within the relationship they share with you, to also keep a check on how you are going through. That's how we create connectedness within communities. Self-care is important, compassion is important, kindness is important, gratitude is important, but what is also very important is to reciprocate these towards the people who are there around us. Something that we have probably not necessarily paid adequate attention to. It was very different in the olden times when there would be the joint family system, people would be always available. Now, with the increasing nuclearization of families, individuals moving to different cities for their jobs, not necessarily having too many ties within the city that they may be living in, necessitates that in order to avoid getting into a space where you can feel that sense of loneliness permeating through your entire being, you focus on building those relationships and take steps actively to connect with, getting to know your neighbors, the elderly within the communities that you stay, and also to check in with your colleagues, your co-workers as to how they are, what's going on with them. Build that support system, create that connection, because this is going to be the one aspect besides you being more aware of what happens with you, which would support you in maintaining your state of wellness, your state of well-being. So build that relational connectivity as well, because that's something which is very important for the rest of your life. So choose to start talking, start sharing, identifying what is happening with you while reciprocating towards others and ensuring that you are also taking care of their well-being while you're also taking care of your own self. So let's take a pledge that we all make sure that we would create a connected self, a self that is connected to its own self and to the people around it, so that you are being able to take care of your sense of well-being.